Childhood is the most critical time for developing attachments because in childhood it's kind of where you learn what the world is like, right? It's where you grow your beliefs and your thoughts about yourself and your place in the world.
So childhood is the most critical time for us to develop attachments, for us to recognize, is the world safe enough? Are relationships safe enough? Will people see me and hear me and understand me? Our brains are learning, our brains are making connections. We are starting to notice predictable patterns in our lives and unpredictable patterns in our lives. So when we are developing, we are also trying to seek and understand how much of a secure base we have with our caregivers and how much we can move forward with growth, with change, trying to understand our world in a new way and seeing if we can come back to that secure base or not. So any kind of adverse childhood experiences, any trauma, attachment wounds, neglect, these situations really affect the way that we see relationships into our adulthood, the way we are able to regulate our emotions, deal with stress. And all of this kind of happens within those really important early years of development for children.
Our attachment style is not the same with everyone. It could be as simple as I feel safe with other women. So you can have a particular kind of attachment style with females versus with males.
Attachment styles are different with different people in our lives. They're also changeable. So we can notice that perhaps with romantic partners, our attachment style is one way, and then with our friends or at work, relationships with those people may be very different. And our attachment styles can also change within our lifetime with different romantic partners, with different friendships. It really depends on the dynamic between ourselves and the dynamic between our partner or the person that we are spending time with.
The difference between a secure and an insecure attachment kind of lies in how you experience the world. In a secure attachment, you perceive the world as a safe place and that, people are generally good and are, you're going to get your needs met from others. Some characteristics of a secure attachment is just like an ease with other people, an ease making connection with others, and kind of a sense of competency in yourself, right? Like, I'm going to be okay, even if this difficult thing is happening, right? You have the resources, or you feel like you can have the resources to make it through.
There's a lot more feelings of safety within the relationship at times in a secure relationship and in a secure attachment. We feel that what we have to say, who we are as people, is going to be respected because we've had caregivers who have shown up for us when we needed them, who have been available when our needs haven't been met, who have shown us that the world is overall a safe and predictable place. And when it's not, you have people there to care for you and support you through that.
Whereas insecure attachment, the world is not so safe. You can be distrustful of other people, not believe in yourself. You can struggle with your own agency and just like a generalized feeling that, maybe the world is out to get you. The world is not a good and safe place.
There's a sense of unworthiness, of loneliness, sometimes of avoidance of how we're really feeling in the relationship. So there's a few different types of specific insecure attachments. The first being one that a lot of people have heard about, anxious or ambivalent attachment. And with this form of insecure attachment, there is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of feelings of unworthiness or feelings of not being good enough for your partner, worries and fears of abandonment. This can often come from a childhood that was potentially very disorganized or really unpredictable. Moments with a caregiver where you weren't sure if your needs would be met. Moving from an anxious attachment to another insecure attachment, which is avoidant attachment. When we are really avoiding relational conflict, sometimes when we avoid relational closeness, oftentimes people who tend to be a little bit more avoidant also maybe aren't as open about their feelings or as direct about their needs and their boundaries in any given situation, especially with a romantic partner. Growing up with caregivers, people who have developed an avoidant attachment often have caregivers who neglect their needs. Maybe they have learned through this predictable pattern that when they show up and they have really big needs, really overwhelming feelings, as all children do, those needs and those feelings aren't met with compassion or care, and sometimes more neglect or punishment. And this really shows up in the adult relationship by engaging in that same avoidant pattern and that same avoidant feeling of, if I show up as I am to you, you most likely will shut me down.
In our culture, in our world, we know a lot about what's called capital T trauma. So that's like one incident, like a car accident or something like that, that can be traumatizing for someone. But what is kind of a little bit more under the surface is what we call small t trauma, which are the repeated difficulties that we experience in childhood, like the small needs being unmet, that kind of build into this bigger feeling that the world isn't safe and that we're not going to be taken care of. You can absolutely process trauma without directly talking about the event by kind of tuning into what's happening in your body, right? So in certain situations that bring up stress, you don't have to go back to figure out why that relationship or that situation is stressful for you. You can actually just learn to manage the stress that's happening in your body, the reaction that's happening in your body, so that, you know, you're kind of like what we were talking about with polyvagal, you know, rewiring neural connections.
So in trauma-informed care, we want to move from a place of feeling like you have to describe everything that happened to exploring the emotions, exploring the body sensations that happen when those trauma responses or trauma symptoms kind of come online. We work from a nervous system activation place where you can work on resourcing yourself, on learning coping strategies and grounding strategies that support you in those moments of hypervigilance or shutdown to come back into the space that you're in. So a good way to recognize if you're in a space or with a therapist who is trauma informed is to notice how they take your feedback. So if you're able to say to them, you know, that made me really uncomfortable, or I'd rather you describe my presenting concerns or this in this way rather than the way you described it. If they're open to collaborating with you, if they are calm and patient and interested in how their words, how the speed of therapy, how the process of therapy affects you and wants to meet you where you are in that space, they're likely moving from a trauma-informed framework perspective. Another really good way is to explore how you feel in the space. If you feel safe, if you feel comfortable, if you know that any concerns you have, you'd be able to address with your therapist and explore those from a place of compassion and warmth and curiosity, rather from a place of fear or worry or feeling uncomfortable.
They're going to look at you like an individual, and there's not going to be like this kind of one size fits all type of treatment. So they're really going to hone in on the specifics of what's going on for you and where your difficulties lie. The things that you struggle with in your life aren't a negative personality characteristic, but they're actually ways that you have learned to adapt over time to protect yourself in what was a really difficult situation at one point, and that, you know, you're not in that same place now, so you can learn new ways of relating that work better for you today.
So a really big and exciting part of trauma-informed therapy is that you get to be in a space with someone who is a therapist and a guide for you, but also someone who is willing to meet you where you are. This can often teach you not only how to show up in the therapy space, how to work through your patterns, how to understand your trauma, and create grounding and resourcing strategies, but it can also help you in other relationships in your life. It can help you set boundaries. It can help you be direct with your needs, inform people about what you're comfortable with, maybe offering yourself space to recognize what feels safe for you, what feels comfortable for you, and what doesn't, and how you can kind of address that not only in a therapeutic space, but also outside in your daily life.
Redbird Therapy.